All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to B-Dubs in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. Let's get started because I think he's got a few really good stories to share with us. Our guest tonight, Mr. Ed Wade. Let's try that again. The architect of the '08 World Series champion Phillies, damn it.
Let's go.
Ed, thank you so much for coming out.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Again, welcome everybody. You know, the crowd keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I thank everybody for coming out. We do things a little bit different. We're not the normal radio show or podcast or whatever you want to call it. So we have a lot of fun. We interact with everyone. So questions and comments are welcome. You can throw them at us. Just raise your hand. Lauren runs around the room with the microphone. Lauren, raise your hand. There you go. We've got some incredible trivia prizes to give away tonight. It's a mystery, so you're going to get some good stuff. So we'll do that as the show progresses. But again, I want to welcome Ed to the show. Get us started. You started with the Phillies, I believe, in 1977?
Yeah, I was a journalism major at Temple. My senior year, I started working in internships, different places, and one thing led to another. During the 76 playoffs, I worked as a press runner and came back to school for my last semester at Temple in February '77, and there was a letter from Larry Shank, the PR director, asked me to give him a call. I went out to Veterans Stadium, and they offered me the internship for '77. $2.50 an hour, and all the tasty cakes I could eat. I spent the entire '77 season there. While I was there one night, waiting at the fourth floor elevator at the vet, the usherettes at that point kind of called hot pants girls. And as I waited for the elevator, one of the hot pants girls walked up, and I said hello, and she said hello. And we've been married 43 years, so everything in the Wade household happened at the ballpark. So yeah, I started there in '77 as an intern for Larry Shank. He wrote letters of recommendation to all the other clubs, and I got my first full-time job with Houston Astros in PR, and things progressed from there.
Very nice. Good story.
Good thing you had to wait for that elevator.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no telling where I would have ended up otherwise.
And I assume Mrs. Wade's a big baseball fan?
Well, it's by osmosis, the whole family is at this point in time. But yeah, she actually preceded me. She had been an usherette for a couple of years, special education teacher in South Jersey, and the usherette job was a sideline for her, but I ended up doing that for a couple of years, and then we got married in January of '81. Gary Maddox was the best man at my wedding. Gary prided himself thinking that he was the matchmaker between Roxanne and I, because he had met her and had spoken at her school a couple of times. So yeah, again, everything that's taken place sort of was revolved around the game with us.
Very nice, very nice. The vet. I guess you got a few good stories about the vet.
No, it was an experience in all kinds of ways. Yeah, obviously the '93 season was something that I will never forget. The doubleheader in the rain, where I again talking about my wife. I can remember 4:40 in the morning driving into our driveway after we had won the doubleheader, and she said, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Winning the doubleheader. I ended up with Philadelphia Inquirer and went to bed for about a month." But the vet was great. It was obviously at the time it was state of the art, and people embraced everything that happened there, whether it was Phillies baseball or Eagles football, and it was really special in that era. But give credit to Bill Giles and David Montgomery, the vision to build a new ballpark in that area. There was a lot of push to build a new stadium in Center City, so on and so forth. But the fans were really so accustomed to the vet and getting in and out of the vet that it made a lot of sense to put it there. Saw it on paper, saw it going up, never imagined that Citizens Bank Park would turn out to be as great a place as it was. And really, it's become such a focal point for the city. The fan experience, not only the fan experience, but the impact that the fans have on the games there. Forget about October. That level of intensity over the last couple of years has been consistent day in and day out. So the credit goes again to people like Bill Giles and Dave Montgomery for building it, and now John Middleton and the group that's there now carrying it forward.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, how about a big hand for 1980 World Series champion Dickie Knowles in the house? You know I wasn't letting that get away from you.
I'd like to share a quick story about Dickie if I can. Dickie was our employee assistant professional for us, and dealt with all of our players from rookie ball, Latin American, the young guys in Latin America, all the way through the big leagues. And I will say this emphatically that in the time that Dickie was doing that job for the Phillies, he saved lives, literally saved lives, saved careers, day in and day out, saved careers, got guys on the right track to get to the big leagues, guys who were faltering. He was there to lend a hand any way he can. I'll give another a specific shout out to Dickie on one specific thing that maybe I shouldn't do it because of
He already knows he's laughing.
medical issues and things of that nature. But you folks will remember that when I was general manager, we in the Rule 5 draft in December at the winter meetings, we drafted a player and we brought him to the big leagues, and he wasn't going to make the club. And the rule is that if you take a guy in the Rule 5 draft and he's not going to make your club, you have to send him through irrevocable waivers, which means that any other club can take the player, but then they have to keep him in the big leagues. If he gets through waivers, then the player can take his free agency. If he doesn't take his free agency, then you can send him to the minor leagues. Well, the player cleared waivers. We talked the player into going to AAA. AAA at the time was in Scranton. Dickie Knowles went up to Scranton, and the player came up to Dickie and said, "Dickie, I have attention deficit disorder, and I have never been medicated." Dickie took the player to a doctor, got him diagnosed, got him medicated. Now, this player, we would see him in spring training before all this happened, and we'd see one tool a day. He'd hit a triple, then he'd get thrown out on a silly play, or he'd make a mistake in the outfield, but then he'd do something great. So we saw all these tools, but they didn't come together. Dickie got the player medicated, and the player's name is Shane Victorino. So think about what happened for the Phillies in 2008 and all those other years, and think about it happening without Shane Victorino. Good luck with that one. So that's a shout out to Dickie. Now, I probably violated a lot of rules there medically, but they can't fire us, Dickie. Been there, done that.
Great stories.
Yeah.
We're only 10 minutes in.
Exactly.
Johnny, what do you got?
Well, I mean, let's just look at the players that you have drafted, the core players, through the 018 Myers, Earl, Howard, and Utley. The list keeps going on. And then, like you said, getting Shane Victorino, trading to get Bobby Abreu, who was, before, ended up leaving before the 08s. But, quality players, it's like,
we have to give credit where credit is due, and most of the players you named would not have been here without great scouting and player development.
right, yeah.
And from the standpoint of both scouting and player development, because I put him in charge of both for the last couple of years that I was there with Mike Arbuckle. When Lee Thomas, a great credit to Lee Thomas. Lee did a lot of great things, got us to the '93 World Series, but he also brought some really great people in. Particularly when he brought Mike Arbuckle in as our scouting director, because all of those guys that you named came in under Mike's tutelage, and the scouts, the dedicated guys, the unsung heroes of the game, at least they were at that point in time, pre-analytics. They went out and found these players, and we created a player development system that got them to the big leagues at the appropriate time, and then filled in around the edges once we got into Citizens Bank Park and had the wherewithal to go out and do other things. But it all happened with the solid core nucleus of player development. And that was a lesson that I learned not only from Lee Thomas, but talking to Paul Owens and Dallas Green, Lee Ilya, so many different people who cut their teeth at the level of player development in the Phillies organization. And I took pride in the fact that we were able to carry that philosophy and that approach forward. I wish 2008 had happened a little bit earlier, because maybe I would have been there at that point in time, so with the Astros. But it was what we were dedicated to doing was, as Dave Montgomery coined it, get good and stay good. Going from the vet to Citizens Bank Park, we wanted to have a core nucleus that we knew not only was going to be competitive for a year, but could be competitive for the long term.
Right.
And then you look up and you'd see 2008, 2009, and even some of the elements still around in the organization today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, how difficult was it for you? Because you had to, get Tommy when you came into the new ballpark, did the self-ticket and stuff, which kind of maybe held Howard back a little bit. And of course, then people were coming after you. Hey, I'll take Howard from you, type of thing. How difficult was that for you to have to, hold back and.
Well, the first part of it, again, we knew that when we were going to go from the vet to Citizens Bank Park, what the economic impact would be, the positive economic impact would be in having a new ballpark. And so the ownership was dedicated to say, okay, now we can move forward. And I think the signing of Jim Thome epitomized what we were talking about. The way that he was embraced when we brought him in, and before the ballpark was even built, took him over and saw what the suites were like, and the electricians union standing outside. I mean, little things sometimes, at the end of the day, money means a lot.
Right.
But I think the way that Jim was embraced, really, it sort of showed that what we the Phillies were talking about was real.
Right.
From a standpoint of Ryan Howard, in all candor, we felt that Ryan still had holes that he had to take care of at the minor league level. He still had a hole, and Dickie Knowles could confirm this. He had a big hole inside, and he's well below average defensive first baseman. I know people say, well, he wasn't that great a defensive first baseman going forward. But we're talking about leaps and bounds that he was able to cover, having that extra time at the minor league level. And again, the fact that we were able to bring in Thome and go out and do other things, make the trade for Kevin Millwood and have the wherewithal to do those types of things, to build around that core nucleus, eventually led to where we all hoped it was going to get to.
Right, exactly. And then, it also made it a little bit difficult, I would hope that Scott Rowland would have seen that foresight and been able to hang around himself and kind of force, your hand, to move on.
Well, it was tough when you start talking about, we're going to get good, we're going to be good. There are guys at a different stage in their careers are going to say, okay, that sounds great, but what about me, my time and circumstance now? And the two guys in particular that fell into that category were Kurt Schilling and Scotty. I'm not proud of the deals we were able to make for either guy, but people saw what the circumstances were that we were dealing with, and so on and so forth. But I understand and understood at the time where they were, particularly Roland. I wish that Scott had bought in a little bit more of what we were trying to do. But from the standpoint of really the benefit of the club was to take a step backward in that regard, to continue to make the steps forward that we needed to get to where we needed to go.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, that would have been.
Because I traded the best third baseman in baseball at that point in time. And there's the debates of Mike Schmidt versus Scott Rowland and all that kind of stuff. All you got to do to know what kind of player Scott Rowland was, take a trip to Cooperstown someday, and you can go ahead and look at his plaque.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, did you back then? Did you foresee, Scotty being a Hall of Famer? Could you see that developing?
Well, you talk about 5-tool players, and you can look at Scott Rowland and say all those tools were there from the very first day he set foot on a major league field. So whether the body of work, as we've seen with some of the guys that are on the fringes right now in Hall of Fame voting and everything, you never know. Again, the emphasis goes to this or goes to that. It's more analytics driven right now when the writers sit down and cast their ballots. You can never be sure. But passing the eye test, there was no question you're looking at a Hall of Fame player. And anybody who's spent any time in baseball in any kind of role would tell you the same thing. I'm sure Mike Schmidt could sit there as a Hall of Famer playing that position and say, it's only a matter of time. And they were right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he had all the intangibles. Like I said.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure watching him play.
Any questions in the room? Comments? Come on, I know we got a lot of Phillies fans. I can see the colors. The colors came out in spring training time. What's going through those minds?
Shawnee's got a question.
Shawnee got it. Wheels. There's our resident Wheels guy. from the great first state.
Right. Hey, first of all, thank you for '08, putting that team together was great. But my question is there any stories about a trade or free agent signing that was on the table that didn't happen, that we don't, as fans, don't know about?
Well, people talk about the Barry Zito stuff and Chase Utley and things of that nature. That was never, there were never any legs to that whatsoever. We were committed to, again, getting good and staying good. We sat there, and there's so many things that we sat there and said, well, if we could do this, we, for the longest time, in the same period of time where we signed Jim Thome, we were also trying to add quality starting pitching at the same time. So we were chasing Tom Glavine, and Glavine was also being moved by the Mets, and then ended up going to the Mets. So we traveled that for a long time. Jamie Moyer was interested in coming back at that point, not when he did come back, but this was prior to that. And we sort of had to park him in neutral until we saw what was going to happen with Glavine. And eventually I finally called Jamie and said, look, Jamie, we don't know where this is headed, but if you got a deal, because we thought he had a deal to go back to Seattle at that point in time, I said, go ahead and take your deal and go there. And so he was fine. He did that. Glavine ends up with the Mets. Now we're talking to Paul Bird. Paul Bird signs with Atlanta. So we're basically into the tail end of the free agent season. And there's a date, December the 20th, whether it still is or not. December the 20th is the date where if you had to tender contracts by December the 20th, where that player would become a free agent. On the morning of December the 20th, I'm driving to the office and my cell phone rings. It's John Sherholz with the Braves. And he said, we're going to non-tender Kevin Millwood. But if you trade Johnny Estrada for Kevin Millwood right now, you'll have Millwood. He's arbitration eligible. You don't have to wait till he's a free agent, have to bid against other clubs. So it literally was a 2-phone call trade. It was just the quickest trade I ever made. I said, let me get into the office. I got into the office. I talked to Ruben Amaro, my assistant, Mike Arbuckle, and Dave Montgomery. And I called John back and made the trade, and that's how we ended up with Kevin Millwood. Wow. I mean, we were dead in the water trying to add a quality starting pitcher, and we ended up with Millwood ends up pitching a no-hitter for us and really putting a couple of really good seasons for us. So sometimes things fall into your lap. We talked about the how we got Shane Victorino in the Rule 5 draft. When I was the assistant GM, Lee Thomas was the GM, and in the Rule 5 draft, it's held at the winter meetings, and every club has a chance. You go around twice, and most of the time, teams pass. You've got to have room on your roster to take a player Rule 5 draft. So we took Sal Campusano was an outfielder. We took Sal Campusano in our first pick in the Rule 5 draft that year. And Lee Thomas and I are sitting together, and it's coming around to us again. And Lee said, do we have anybody else on our list? I said, well, we got this third baseman from the San Diego organization that a couple of our guys really like. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, we got the space for him. He said, well, let's go ahead and take him. And so I had the piece of paper. I stood up the Philadelphia Phillies, the second selection in the Rule 5 draft, selecting the contract of third baseman Dave Hollins. That's how we got Dave Hollins. The San Diego Padres went into that winter meetings with Carlos Baerga was their third baseman, and Hollins was the next guy in line. They traded Baerga the day before the Rule 5 draft, and we took Hollins in the Rule 5 draft. So that one just fell into our laps where Lee said, do we have any more room? And we happened to have 2 slots open instead of 1 slot. Sal Campusano was sort of kind of guy, but Dave Hollins obviously was the real deal and went on to be a great part of the 1993 club, and then spent a number of years as a tremendous professional scout for the Phillies. So stuff like that happens. Big deals fall through. We thought we had Mariano Duncan signed as a free agent in 1992 at the winter meetings, and Lee Thomas got into an argument with his agent on the phone, and we thought the deal was dead. And Lee took a deep breath and called Tony Antanasio, the agent, back and said, Tony, did you just talk to my evil twin? And they got the deal back together, and Mariano Duncan came into play. I will say one thing just to sort of segue here, because tried to prepare to look at what the Phillies roster is right now, and they just made the deal for Merrifield as a free agent. And if you look at what he's capable of doing, the first guy that popped into my mind was Mariano Duncan. He's a multiple position guy. He's got power. He's got speed. He's one of those guys you can put him in as a regular player. This is a guy that, you sort of, at this point in the winter, you're sort of putting now in the spring, you're sort of putting the final touches on your roster. This guy, if Merrifield comes in and does what he's done in the past, he's a huge addition for the Phillies going forward.
Yeah. No, I think he's going to be a real good addition, like you said, because he can play multiple positions.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, pretty much play almost every day, but maybe not in that one position.
And frankly, having a guy like that, it sort of pushes the other guys along to make sure that they're not going to lose playing time, because they've got to find ways to get him into the lineup, and it's a nice problem for the manager to have.
Oh yeah, you think he's going to take over a lot of left field spot, maybe?
I guess until Marsh is healthy, that's certainly a residual benefit of having him. Again, just looking at the club and trying to prepare for tonight, I started thinking about, people say, well, they didn't do a whole lot with their pitching. They did go back and get Nola,
Right.
but they made a huge improvement to their pitching staff last year when they brought the center fielder up from AAA. If you're going to improve your pitching staff, the other way to do it is improve your defense.
Right.
So now you go with the kid in center field to be able to, the ability to move Marsh to left field, and then if Schwarber is a DH, automatically your pitching gets better.
Yeah. Sure.
And again, the Nola signing was huge. You've got to have guys out there who be able to compete into longer stints. Although, again, I think there were fewer than 10 complete games in the entire big leagues last year, or fewer than 10 200-inning pitch guys. And right at the edge of that, just below that, you had Wheeler and Nola. So, to be able to add that kind of arm, but again, as your defense improves, guys get away with some mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and the kid's going to go catch it in center field, and if he hits, frankly, the ability to steal bases. I think there's a lot of different things that happened with those young guys that we saw at the end of last season. I frankly think that Bryson Stott could be the leadoff guy, and then have your shortstop hit behind him, and then if the center fielder's hitting ninth, you've got three speed guys in the latter part of the inning. So that's a lot of guys for guys like Harper and others to be knocking in as they're stealing bases, hitting triples, and in the case of I know Trey Turner got off to a bad start last year. What we saw the second half, that's Trey Turner, that second half guy, and for a full season, people are going to love what they're going to see out of him.
Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about Jim Tomey. Can we bring Charlie Manuel into the mix?
Charlie, the smartest man in baseball in 43 years in baseball that I've ever been around is Larry Bowa. There's no question about that. Bowa is the smartest baseball man. He sees things on the field that other people don't see. So he was the right guy when I let Terry Francona go. Bowa was the right guy to sort of instill the type of discipline that we felt that we needed with the younger club going forward. And then it got to a point where we needed to make another change, and we interviewed a lot of people, and there's a lot of, I know this, you guys are not sports talk radio, but there's a lot of discussion on sports talk radio on who the right guys are, who we were talking to, and who weren't the right guys. And Charlie Manuel wasn't really well received in those early days, both from the standpoint of the way he was treated in the media and the fan base, which was somewhat influenced by his accent, so on and so forth. Well, lo and behold, a couple of years later, Charlie Manuel couldn't buy a meal or a drink in the entire Tri-City area. Charlie Manuel is a tremendous baseball guy. Hitting wise, there wasn't a better hitting guy in the world. That's why when I did hire Charlie as the manager, I said, Charlie, what do you think of making Milt Thompson your hitting coach? Because Milt's background and so on and so forth, I said, it's going to be your hitting philosophy anyway. And Milt became the hitting instructor and did a tremendous job for the Phillies in that role. So Charlie helped solidify everything for us. And Charlie was the driving force in that clubhouse as to pointing the guys in the right direction and knowing what moves to make, knowing when to rely on his coaches for their input, accepted their input. And this is a guy who's been there, done that at the big league level, playing in the minor leagues, playing in Japan. And I can't say enough about what Charlie meant to the organization. It still means today in his role as an advisor for the club.
Yeah, I saw a piece this morning on Larry, 57 years with the Phillies.
He's incredible.
Is that possible?
Oh, it's absolutely possible. Now, again, go back to the internship year in '77 that I had. What was the shortstop then? And you know, the fiery stuff and all those things. But it's the little things that he can see in a player and what he can see on the field that, you know, it's there. And a lot of veteran baseball guys that played in the big leagues, which, you know, I never came close to doing, see some of it. Bo sees it all, and is willing to voice his opinion about those types of things. And that's why he's of great value to the organization now as an advisor to Dave Dombrowski and John Middleton and everybody else in the hierarchy. And I guess and I know I've been around some of the discussions between the two of them, but I guess if you really want to have a fun night, go sit at a game with Charlie and Bo at the same time. And I guess it's if you get those two guys on a show like this, your ratings will go through the ceiling.
You don't know how close we were actually to have that happen.
Well, I was certainly tuning in for that.
Oh, absolutely,
They're two tremendous baseball people, and the Phillies and the city of Philadelphia are fortunate to have had them for in both cases as long as they have, and for the time that Charlie's been around.
Yeah. Now, you may have been right on the edge of analytics and that kind of stuff coming in, and not so much with the Phillies, but
You told me you were going to be nice.
I am being nice. No, I'm being nice. I'm just asking, like, how much do you think that may have affected the baseball today, and way general managing is being done?
Well, again, a little bit about my background. I went from the Phillies to the Astros to the Pirates in PR, and then I went to work for Tal Smith Enterprises. And Tal was former general manager of the Yankees and the Astros, and started coming, and we represented teams in salary arbitration. So we did tons of salary arbitration cases where everything was, and again, this was old school analytics and that type of thing. So we went through. I had that experience as assistant general manager. I negotiated all the contracts, and obviously as the general manager involved in those types of things. So I get analytics. In answer to your question, it went way beyond where the game needed to get.
Right.
Where the decisions were being made. Paul Owens used to talk about, Paul said that the two biggest assets that you have are head and heart, whether you're a player or in the front office. You've got to have had a head to understand things, but you've got to have the heart involved in it. And I think we got too much head and not enough heart for a long time. All that said, I think they're important components to the game. I don't think we should be dismissive of analytics and the driving force that they've been in the game. But I do think it was very refreshing that last year with the rule changes that we had regarding shifts, I am not a fan of the closer bases, but it did motivate guys to run more. And all of a sudden we were back to that game. We weren't in home run derby all the time. We weren't we're still in an era where they want pitchers to throw as hard as you can for as long as you can. And that's when we get back to so few 200 inning pitched. You've got starters that are going 3 or 4 innings. You're going to your bullpen in the 3rd and 4th inning. You're asking bullpen guys to be, today you're the closer, tomorrow you're the long guy. There's got to be established roles, particularly at the back end of a bullpen, and it's hard to do that when you're piggybacking starters and all that. The piggybacking starters at the minor league level, I call that the college of middle relief, because you're not developing pitchers. The guy goes out there, first of all, he goes out there probably knowing they're only going to have me pitch 4 innings, or I'm limited to 60 pitches. They want me to throw as hard as I can for as long as I can. I may get into a jam in my last inning, and they're going to have a guy come in and try to get me out of that jam that I put us in. So then the guy gets to the big leagues, and he's never had to get out of a jam. He's never had to work out of a jam. And the general manager up in the box, and even the nice guys like me, they're throwing stuff all over the box and screaming and yelling. And all you have to do is point the finger at yourself and say, well, this is what you want. Piggybacking starters, you've got a lot of middle relievers. And middle relievers are playing big roles in the game now because there are no more starters left. So anyway, I think analytics are important. Obviously, I've got passionate feelings of head and heart, because that's what I grew up with the guys that were my mentors. So there's got to be some equilibrium in all this stuff. And again, maybe 2023 showed us that we're that we're beginning to have a willingness to look at the total game a little bit more and find out exactly how we're going to do this.
I like Larry Bowa's theory. He was telling us when he was on the show the one time, he was sitting up in the box with the analytic department, and there was exit velocity, fly ball out to center field, and he goes, "What do you think that exit velocity was?" And Larry's like, "F8." It doesn't matter. It's an F8.
We had a picture when I was with the Astros, and I guess I won't use his name, although I should, because he ended up assaulting me. But we had a picture. I'll say his name. We're already in spring training. This is the Astros, and our friend Scott Morse, the agent, called me and said, no, it wasn't Scott, it was a different agent. I've got a pitcher named Sean Chacon. Sean was from Colorado last. I knew where Sean was. Would you give him a chance to come in and compete for a spot in your rotation? And I said, sure. So he came in, he won a spot, he was the fifth spot in our rotation. First couple of starts, opening season, he was okay. And then it started going downhill. And now we're playing the Little League game in Baltimore. And every rocket that he gave up, he would turn around and look at the video board and watch it go. And I'm thinking, why would you want to watch it a second time? So 2 days later, we're in Tampa, and I went to Cecil Cooper, our manager. I said, we got to take him out of rotation. So we called him into the office, told him he's coming out of rotation. So then the next 3 days, he's telling the media he wants to be traded. And we have an off day on Monday. And so Tuesday, you figure it's all over. I'm going to the clubhouse about a half hour before the game. And one of the TV guys stops me and said, hey, I just did an interview with Sean Chacon, and he wants to be traded. So I went into the manager's office and I said, Coop, we need to get the player into your office to talk to him about this. So I said, I got to go get something out of my office. I'll be right back down. I came back down and Cecil Cooper, the manager, was sitting by himself in his office. I said, where's Sean? He said, he won't come in. I said, what? He said, he won't come in the office. I said, what? He said, he won't come in for a meeting. I said, well, where is he now? He said, he's in the lunchroom. So I go in the lunchroom and he's sitting at a table by himself and he's eating a sandwich. And I said, Sean, I'd like to talk to you. He said, well, what about? I said, Sean, I've got to talk to you. He said, well, anything you can, any bleeping thing you can say right here. I said, Sean, this isn't the right spot for it. Come on to the Coop's office. And he said it a second time. And I said, okay, you want me to say that? My voice was a little bit raised at this point. I said, all right, you want me to say it in front of your teammates? You need to look at yourself in the bleaking mirror. And the next thing I know, Sean Chacon is 6'5", and I'm 5'10". The next thing I know, I'm looking up at Sean Chacon, and the next thing I know, I'm flying backwards through the air. I literally flew 12 feet through the air when he shoved me, fractured the vertebrae in my back, sprained my wrist, and was coming at me to get me more. Thank goodness we had a picture, an outfield, and Reggie Abercrombie picked Chacon up and carried him out of the clubhouse, or he would have come after me. So I don't know why I started to tell that story, but I will finish it by saying he filed a grievance because when we released him. When you release a player during the season, you owe him his full salary. We owed him $1.1 million at that point. We refused to pay him. He arbitrated it. We won the arbitration. So his shove cost him $1.1 million, and me a trip to a couple of years later to get the vertebrae cleared up on my back. So anyway, completely unrelated story to anything else.
So you want to be a
Seeing
general
Dickie Noel
manager?
sitting there, I think he would have. If Dickie had been there, somebody would have died. Let's put it that way.
So you want to be a general manager?
I think it's easy, huh?
Laurie, I think this is where you come into play here.
Sure. All right, so I've got the Mattis Minute. I feel like I need to preface this by saying I don't write these questions. Somebody else does.
That guy in the blue jacket, where
I'm
he
just a
does.
deliverer. So we want the first thing that comes to your mind.
It's this gentleman over here that's holding his brow.
His face is as red as could be right now.
It's just like the Rorschach test where I've got,
So some of them are baseball related, some of them are just personal, they're just fun questions. So the first thing that comes to your mind.
totally unexcited already. So.
What was the strangest contract incentive clause you ever included in a deal?
Well, I'd have to think about that one. The strangest. We were pretty normal in our stuff. Let me think about it and get back to that one.
When you watch the movie Moneyball, do you fast forward to the places where you're mentioned?
No, I do not. No, because when Moneyball first came out, That was when analytics were, and I was completely anti what was happening back then. Although, Bill, I actually before the movie came out, or before I was aware of it, somehow I don't think social media existed at that point in time. But one of my daughters, my daughter Maureen, calls me. I'm in Houston at this point, and she said, "You're in this new Billy Bean movie, Moneyball." And I said, okay. So I called Billy up and I said, Billy, my daughter just called and said I'm in your movie. I said, do I get ripped in your movie? And he said, no, it's completely A in the name. And he told me the trade that was discussed in it. But no, I guess the one thing I can take out of that was that forever and ever and ever, Brad Pitt will actually say, oh, Wade is a good guy.
There you go.
There you go. If you have your choice, are you having the steak, the fish, or the salad?
Steak. I don't eat fish, and salad is a side.
Okay. What is your second favorite sport to watch?
My second favorite sport is hockey. My son played ice hockey through the Naval Academy, and we were big fans before that, and got a chance to meet John LeClaire and some of those guys. So Bobby Clark, got to know Bobby, we were both GMs. So yeah, hockey's the next one. College basketball, love college basketball. I don't watch a second of NBA basketball. Can't wait for the NCAA tournament to start.
We'll have to get you in our tournament then. We do a tournament.
Okay. Do we have anybody taller than the three of us?
No, our bracket.
I know.
During your days in Houston, did you ever notice anybody ordering a special kind of trash can lid?
No, I did not. And I still hope today that Jose Altuve really wasn't part of it. So Jose Altuve is a tremendous guy. I actually brought Jose straight from AA to the big leagues. I was told that he's too small to play in the big leagues. I said, well, if he hits 250, he's 5'8". Turns out he's 6'2". So yeah, no, I'm happy that I wasn't there for that. It's a blotch on the game. I wish there were stiffer penalties handed out to the people who were truly found to be involved in it, because it was a travesty of the game.
Yeah. Was Kurt Schilling the most difficult player to work with ever?
He never assaulted me, so I just although I'm sure he would have at different points. You know what? A great pitcher. The amount of time he spent with ALS and the different things in the community that he did. He got a lot of notoriety for that kind of stuff. I think he enjoyed the notoriety, but the fact of the matter is he was doing that. And when he took the ball 60 feet 6 inches from home plate, whether it was in Philadelphia or the Diamondbacks or the Red Sox, it was game on. The other stuff, the extraneous stuff, is just that it's extraneous stuff. And whether you're the general manager, an assistant general manager, or a fan of the game, it's really what the guy produces on the field and how he's accepted in the clubhouse. And in the days, the 93 era, you had people like Darren Dalton and Pete Incaviglia and other guys in that clubhouse who sat on Kurt and made sure that he understood. At the end of the day, his job was every fifth day to go out there and put us where he put us, which was a chance to win the World Series in Toronto.
Have you ever had a memorable, awkward moment where you unexpectedly ran into a player you had just recently traded to another team and constantly feared for your life?
Can we get back to Sean Chacon? No. Everything that I'm fortunate enough, 43 years in baseball, to have been around a lot of guys with the greatest makeup in the world, the Jim Toneys and Dale Murphys and Jimmy Rollins and all these guys. No, it's a wonderful game, and it's a very tough business. And there are ill feelings, sure there are ill feelings, but at the end of the day, everybody's sort of looking for the same thing out of the game. We all just come from a different perspective to try to make sure we're making the right decisions along the way.
Don't you agree that the Phillies should adopt a Taylor Swift song as their 2024 theme song, so she'll attend games and create all sorts of fun and chaos?
I think there's enough fun and chaos already at Citizens Bank Park. I'm a country music fan, and she's sort of shifted away from that. Maybe Cody Johnson instead. That's our thought.
Please rank your top 3 all-time favorite managers to work with.
I've already named 2, Charlie and Bo, and the other, I need to name 4. Charlie, Larry Boa, Bill Burden, and Chuck Tanner. Bill Burden was the manager when I went to the Astros, my first full-time job. Straightest shooter in the world, a wonderful guy, tremendous career, primarily with the Pittsburgh Pirates as a player. Chuck Tanner got the most out of everybody. He made built everybody up to believe that they were the best players in the world. Before I got to the Pirates, 79 World Series champion. Was also a complete gentleman to me all the time. Befriended him in his later days before he passed away. And then I mentioned the other 2 guys, just, Bo and Charlie will forever be right there at the top of that list.
I'm resorting back to what I said about how I don't write these questions before I do this one. Did you ever realize that Ed Wade spelled backwards is almost Ed Wade? It's actually Ed Audi, which is pretty close. Pretty wild, huh?
Well, in between that, I can admit that my middle name is Aloysius, which cuts all that stuff. Edward Aloysius Wade Jr. Yeah, fine Irishman, yeah.
All right, and we're turning back to the first question. So what was the strangest contract incentive clause you ever included in a deal?
See, in all candor, you're very limited to what you hear stories about the guys that got a horse and things of that in their contracts. We were basically, working with dollars and cents kind of thing. So I could make something up, but
That's fair.
where we would, ask for different things from time to time. You had to say no. Some guys got tractors, not from us, but trying to remember the first baseman with the Braves got a tractor, I think, things of that nature. Sorry.
And that's the next minute.
I'll bail you out of that question. Let's talk a little bit about one of my favorite Phillies, Carlos Ruiz.
Yes. Carlos Ruiz is one of the finest gentlemen in the world. I was honored, literally honored, the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame, the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, this past winter. Had their induction ceremony, and Cheech was one of the recipients. And my wife and I sat with Carlos and his 2 sons. Great guy. Somehow in this whole scheme of things, when people talk about that 08 club, he gets talked about, but he doesn't get the accolades, and that's probably because he showed up every day, he put the gear on, he ran the pitching staff, he contributed offensively, and showed up every day to do his job, and never, in the time that I was around him and in succeeding years, never put himself first, was always part of a team.
Very cool, very cool. Hey, Johnny, we're running out of time.
I know, it's fine.
We gotta do some trivia.
I know.
We gotta do
Fine.
some trivia.
The little guy
whole
over here.
table's been eliminated.
The little guy over here is
This
going
whole
to ask
table.
Exactly. All right.
All right, arms up. Martin will get to you.
All right. Who did Ed trade to acquire Bobby Abreu?
Wow.
That was good.
Wow.
There you go. You got it.
It was actually, I was the assistant general manager at the time, but the way that all came down was, the game was expanding in, it was Florida and Arizona were expansion clubs, so it was going to be an expansion draft. We were looking for an outfielder, and both clubs had interest in Kevin Stockton. And so Lee Thomas talked to both general managers, and the general manager with Tampa Bay said that he could get his hands. He couldn't tell us specific names, but we would give him names, and he could say, well, I can get my hands on that guy or not that guy. So we brought up Abreu's name, and he said I could get my hands on that guy. Now at the same time, we had a difference of opinion in our room as to who we should be trying to get. I'm trying to remember there was another outfitter who a lot of guys in the room really liked. Fortunately for me personally, Lee Thomas allowed me to go out and scout for 2 straight springs. And I had Quentin McCracken was the other outfielder. I had Houston in spring training coverage for 2 years, and I kept coming back to Lee saying, Lee, the Astros have this guy named Bobby Abreu. They got Richard Hidalgo and Bobby Abreu. For whatever reason, they did not like Bobby Abreu. I said, Lee, this guy would be a great fit for us. So now we're in the room talking about what are we going to do, quick McCracken. As Lee's assistant, I had the ability to be the last voice in Lee's ear. And I said, Lee, this is the guy that we should go after. And that's why we could have traded with either club. We could have traded soccer either to Colorado or Tampa Bay. And the way the deal came about was we made the deal, traded him. They made the pick for Abreu, and then we traded Stocker, and Abreu became ours. So Tampa Bay was just a path through for Bobby, and that's why Stock ended up with Tampa Bay.
All right, which one of these core 08 Phillies teams players did Ed not draft? You got Brett Myers, Pat Burrell, Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Cole Hamels, or Ryan Madsen.
All right, so they have to name how many?
Just one. No,
Just one.
out of that group, who did he not
One
draft?
that did not draft.
One of that names he did not draft.
Chase Utley.
No, sorry.
Okay.
I had to think of it myself. I had to get my ears straight where my jobs were.
Ryan Matson.
That is incorrect.
Okay, I'm gonna give him the back here.
So you got Brett Myers, Pat Burrell, Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard.
J-Roll.
There you go. Good job.
He was all right.
Anything he knows had his hand up also. Yes.
It was J-Roll, yep. J-Roll, yep. All right. Which college did Ed graduate from?
Whoa.
Graduate is a
Temple was the answer.
Temple is correct. There you go.
Temple Allen. Played baseball for 2.5 years for Skip Wilson there. Got my journalism degree. How, I don't know. But I majored in internships and it worked out okay.
That kid, 43 years in baseball, I think so.
Yep. Who was the manager of the team when Ed took over?
Ooh, I think the name was mentioned earlier.
It was mentioned.
We got a bar guy.
And you're gonna hear it,
That is correct.
and you're gonna hear that name a lot in Cooperstown over these years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, but again, I mentioned before, time and circumstance. You try to do things that fit the circumstances, and Terry was and is a good friend of mine, but time and circumstance dictated that we need Bose as coach at that point in time.
Yep. Exactly. All right. Here's a tough one. Let's see if anybody can figure this one out. During Ed's tenure, he had 4 guys act as manager. He had Terry Francona, Larry Boa, and Charlie Emanuel. Who was the other one? Nope.
I think it's a trick question.
What was the guess?
He said Jim Fregosi, or they said Jim Fregosi. It is a trick question, but the guy only managed for 2 games.
All right, we got another guess.
The Ilya, no. Nope. 2004. It happened for two games. That is correct. Good job.
Very good, yeah.
Look at you.
And the reason that he managed was that I let Bo and the coaches know that I was going to make a change 2 days before the season, and Varsh filled it for us and was the manager.
Yep.
Any more, or we good? You got another?
I have one more.
All right, one more.
You said you weren't too happy about the Scott Rowland trade, but obviously, it was tough circumstances, but you did get a quality player in return. Who was the main player that we got back from Scott Rowland Tree?
He had his hand up before you even finished
I
the
know.
question.
Lucido Polanco.
That is correct. You know, considering your hands were tied a little bit, you know, that you had to move on from him.
This is another guy that, you know, I ended up having to trade him as well. Great, great makeup, tremendous player, multifaceted player. The reason I had to trade him was that we had a need for a closer at the back end of the bullpen, actually an eighth inning pitcher, and got to a point where we were overstressing Billy Wagner as the closer. We needed that eighth inning guy, and we had traded Tim Worrell to Arizona, and then I ended up having to trade Polanco. Actually, Dave Dombrowski was the GM in Detroit. Traded for Ugueth Urbina as the eighth inning guy. And for all kinds of reasons, it didn't work out for him.
And it wasn't
And then
Aaron Rowland.
Philadelphia got Polanco back.
Wasn't Rowland part of that deal too? Aaron Rowland, the center fielder.
No, Aaron came after him.
Yeah,
You know, he may have been in the probably second trip back. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, last call. Any questions, comments in the room? I mean, it's been a great hour here listening to all these stories.
I got a question in the audience.
Mr. Williams, how do you think the rise of sports gambling has affected the game, if at all?
I think universally all sports. I don't drink and I don't bet, but I think it's got all kinds of problems associated with the possibilities down the road. You know, you can say, well, all the sports are doing it, but the way I look at it is we're the only sport that dealt with the Black Sox scandal, and with all due respect, Pete Rose. I don't think that baseball can take that type of hit. I don't think any sport really can, but baseball particularly because of the two things I just mentioned. The other thing is, you know, where does the potential exist in our game for it to become a problem? Is it just associated with the clubhouse? Could it be an official score? You know, how many hits or errors? Could it be somebody in the umpire's room? There are too many variables, I think, where it could be catastrophic. But I guess, again, I'd probably get in trouble with some officials of Major League Baseball by saying this. But I almost get the feel like, okay, yeah, that might happen, but in the meantime, look how it's driving things, economics, so on and so forth. I think it's the very, again, I don't do it, I never would do it, but I get concerned. One real quick story about that: when I would report for the Pirates in PR, we'd get a call every day about 3:00 in the afternoon, and the guy would say, "Hey, you know, is Parker playing tonight? I hear he's got a hamstring, and you know, I don't know if I'm going to come to the game or not." Well, it was a bookie call to want to see whether he should lay money on the Pirates, whether Parker was going to be in the lineup or not. So, you know, again, for the longest time, as assistant GM and GM every spring training, and Dickie sat in these meetings, I would stand in the middle of the clubhouse and I would read the gambling rule, which was called the Pete Rose, or the Pete Rose rule is what it was called at that point in time, about permanent eligibility, and now the whole game is sponsored by DraftKings. It's like Alice in Wonderland or whatever. You're on the other side of the whatever when it comes to that, but it is what it is, and we're just going to have to, you know, say a lot of our fathers and hope it doesn't work out the way it might work out.
Great question. Thank you. Anyone else? Time is ticking. I thought the little man had a question, but Ed, if you could share a story. We've got a lot of young people in the audience tonight. As far as playing sports today, how do you look at the kids today? One sport, two sports, as many sports as possible. What do you see the future there for our young generation?
I think two things. First of all, you need to put the devices down. take advantage of the fresh air and the sunshine. And that's, I sound like a 68-year-old guy when I say that. But I will also tell you that I think experience as many different sports as you possibly can, not just sports, but, scouting and all those types of things. Sample a little bit of everything. My son, obviously, my son Ryan, our oldest, obviously grew up in the game. All three of my kids did. I've got 4 grandchildren now who are going to, peripherally grow up in the game. My son played baseball at Bishop Eustace, but in the 8th grade started playing ice hockey. Ended up playing ice hockey at the Naval Academy. We graduated from the Naval Academy, continued to play as he went through his service time, some things of that nature. But we encouraged him to do those types of things. Selfishly, him being an ice hockey player, that meant that we were in the off season when his games were being played. So I was able to go see his games. If he was playing baseball or summer sport, there's no chance. I was spending literally 14, 15 hours a day at the ballpark, or traveling half the season with the club, or spending 6 weeks in spring training, or being at the winter meetings or the World Series or these things. And I would never have been able to experience those types of things had it not been for him deciding to take up a winter sport and develop his character as leadership. That's the other thing. You may not be the best player in the world, but go out and do those types of things, because it also enhances your ability to learn leadership and discipline and self-awareness and all the types of things that are going to carry you well beyond when you're playing baseball.
Very good, very good.
We've got another question.
All right.
I have one more question. I want you to put your GM hat back on, and then with a lot of talk in Philadelphia surrounding Bryce Harper, with 8 years remaining on his contract, as a GM, how would you handle that? And the second part is, like, when there's discussion or talk like that, is that more driven by the agent or a combination of agent and player?
I think you have to handle it diplomatically. I don't think you foreclose anything. I do think Scott probably drives it to some extent. The guy, from the very beginning, Bryce established he wanted to be a Philly, and the club has extended pretty far out in that regard to make that happen. And he's lived up his share of the bargain to the nth degree. I think it's a discussion that you continue to have internally and kick it around, but again, I'm sort of digressing a little bit. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now in the game is concerning to me, because it sort of mirrors what we saw 15 or 20 years ago. Longer than normal contracts where you're taking players beyond their productive years, deferred compensation, which means that the next owner is going to be on the hook for whatever you're doing at that point in time. Some of these things that have been there, done that kind of stuff. When the Arizona Diamondbacks won, Kurt Schilling was part of it. When the Diamondbacks won the World Series, when they had Schilling and Randy Johnson and Mark Grace and several other guys on that club, that was a one-and-done club. But all those contracts carried a lot of deferred compensation. So they were paying guys to play golf for 4 or 5 years while the club on the field floundered, because the wherewithal wasn't there to pay the current players what they need to. We're not seeing as much deferred compensation, but when you start stretching these contracts out to 6, 7, 8 years, again, now we get back to how you develop pitchers. Throw as hard as you can for as long as you can. There's a real good chance that Tommy John surgery is coming a lot sooner, or maybe a second or third time than you had anticipated, and now you're on the hook for 7, 8 years with that player. So I'm concerned about that. Obviously, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm not ownership. I'm not Major League Baseball. I'm a retired, director of transportation for 3 grandkids. That's my job. But I do get concerned that history repeats itself. And sometimes when you get different people coming into the game, institutional knowledge isn't there. That said, I will say this about Dave Dombrowski. Dave Dombrowski is a lifetime baseball guy. We started at the same time. My mentor was Tal Smith with Houston. His mentor was Roland Heeman with Chicago. David's done a tremendous. We talked about Scott Rowe in the Hall of Fame. We talked about different people, Terry Francona in the Hall of Fame. When David's time is over doing what he's doing, he'll be in Cooperstown as well with Pat Gillick. because the things he's done at every step that he's been, and he's a good payroll to do it at. He had financial wherewithal to be able to do it. But the moves that he's made everywhere, including Philadelphia, will stand true when he gets to Cooperstown.
Absolutely.
Very good. Last call on questions, comments. I don't want to miss anybody. This has been a great hour, and again, a lot of good baseball talk. Everybody excited for spring training baseball?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
First game, I believe, is on Friday versus
Saturday.
Toronto.
Saturday. Oh, first game, TV-wise, yeah.
First TV game, Yankees on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Have
All
you-
right, with all that being said, I want to thank Mr. Ed Wade for, giving up an hour and coming out.
Thank you.
We're still enjoying the 08 team. I don't think that'll ever go away.
I'm getting a little fonder with myself.
Just have one more question for Ed. Talk about the 08 team. How special was that for you, the class act that Pat Gillick, gave you recognition for that team when, he was in the control of it at that time?
I'll tell you another true story. At that point, I'm the general manager of the Astros.
Right.
And my concern is we're beginning a rebuild in Houston. And so, in all candor, when the Phillies won the World Series, I was sound asleep in my apartment in Houston. And my phone started to buzz, and I started looking at these text messages. Isn't it great? First of all, I saw that they had won. And then I get, isn't that great with Pat Gillick and so on and so forth. And I had no idea what they were talking about. Obviously, after the fact, I did. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude for Pat saying that about me, because, again, in all candor, when I got let go at the end of the 05 season, that wasn't the way that people felt about what we did, what we accomplished.
Yeah.
And I lived with that. I lived with that for 4 years. And Pat, I guess for somebody with his credentials now in the Hall of Fame, what he's accomplished in his career at every stop that he's been at, for Pat Gillick in the clubhouse at that moment where the greatest thing in the world is happening for anybody associated with baseball, for him to take the time to say that about me, I'm forever with his dad.
Oh, absolutely. That was a class act.
All right, again, I want to thank B-Dubs for having us every month. We are back here next month. What's that date, Jack?
March 27th.
March 27th.
Yep.
And we're going to roll out some March Madness. Our guest is going to be Chris Jenkins from Villanova. You guys remember that? We bring champions here. That's all we bring.
We're going to make one person cry. They just heard over there.
So anyway, mark it down. Follow us with this Fans View all over social media. And again, we're going to draw the raffle prizes right around 8 o'clock. So give us a little bit of time, give you some time to go over and buy some chances. Get your free ones if you haven't already. Again, big hand for our guests, please.